Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Learn With Me series. The Learn With Me series is a show where we bring on amazing young individuals who are doing well across different sectors, and we bring them on board to share their experience, share their story, and also learn from them. On this episode of the Learn With Me series, I have an amazing guest. Hello, Phoebe.
Hi, favorite Jonah.
So, Phoebe, yeah, this is our second take in doing this, right? I really hope network allows us to get this done fully. All right. So, Phoebe, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on board, right, on this show is because of last year I was in a role as a customer success engineer where I had to like interact with customers. I had to do a lot of community moderations, and I was like, who is the big player in this space, right? One of the big players. And I was like on X and I saw you, right? I believe it was around last year I started interacting with your page, right? So I know you are big on community, right? And before moving further, right, do you mind introducing yourself?
All right. Once again, thanks for having me, favorite. I usually find you have pronouncing the Jome. Is it Jome? Is the
Okay, so
J
it's Jome. Jome.
Jome?
Yes.
All right, Jome.
Yeah.
All right. So, hi everyone. My name is Fiberesima, but I'm preferably called Fibi. And currently, I work in Web3 as a community manager for an RWA focused project called Mobi Automation. And my work basically sits at the intersection of community engagement strategy, community engagement itself, internal collaboration, helping translate product updates into a community-centered interaction, something that the community can say, okay, this is actually what is happening based on like the product development. So aside that, I'm also taking a hands-on approach into marketing, Web3 marketing, because I believe that in this time and age where the whole job landscape is evolving, you have to skill up. You have to like add something extra. So that is what I'm currently doing, like trying to understand go-to-market strategy when it comes to Web3. Like that's my specificity. Then aside the core of what I do, like in Web3, I also love creating UGC content for Web3 brands, Web3 and tech brands that I love and that I use. Yeah. So at the end of the day, yeah, that's like the short about me. I love baking. I love traveling. And I've come to love dogs. I think that's like, if somebody asks me, so what is one thing? I used to fear dogs before, but over time, after I was gifted my first dog, I became very,
Okay.
very, you know, I started to love this
Wow.
animal I once feared. Yeah.
All right. That's amazing. That's amazing. Right. I don't know if I would ever fall in love with like loving dogs, right? But yeah, maybe yeah. So my mom doesn't like dogs at all, right? And I guess that's rubbed off on me. I don't know. Living, yeah. Maybe if we have one, it would spark that love for dogs. Yeah. So that's interesting. So you mentioned baking, right? And while I went through your about me page, right, I was like, you were big in like entrepreneurship, like you were big in this baking space. I even noticed that you featured in the Next Titan show, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, you were big in this space. Like how like walk us through that process of how you transitioned from. I know you're still doing baking, right? But how you transitioned from like baking from a non-tech background to a tech background, even though it's community
Yeah.
manager,
Relate.
which is not so techy, but your role is techy because you're in like the Web3 space and all of that. So do you mind sharing a little bit on how you transition from that non-tech background to this tech background?
Okay. Very interesting question. And I love being asked. All right. So I think it was in 2022 when I decided that I wanted to do tech. first of all, I started out as a product designer, and I feel like that particular phase of my life was very important because I can see how some of the things that I learned in product design now connects to what I do in terms of like managing communities, right? Because in product design, you learn about user experience, which I think it's, also very important that you have the skill set for, because when it comes to community, you're basically designing the community experience for your members. So I started that as a product designer. And over time, I just said, Phoebe, you have to tell yourself the truth. Like, yes, you started out as this, but right now I think it's time to, pivot into something that you are more um something that sparks like genuine, work and passion within you. So just started researching various skills. And at the time, like I was already doing community, right? I'd built a baking community of over 20,000 members for my business. And I saw the huge impacts that community played in helping my business go global. Like I had like an academy called the Smart Baker Academy, which had students in like various African countries and all. So I saw like the huge importance, but I did not know that community management was a thing in tech, right? So when I was carrying out my research and I saw community management, I'm like, this is already something that I was doing. And I feel like this is a skill set that, I can bring into the tech space. So my very first job in tech came via like a recommendation from somebody. And when it was time for me to pitch, I just pitched the results that I was able to achieve for my business. And that was how I got my first job into the tech space. Groove Tickets, like that was my very first, techie job that I did.
All right.
Aside volunteering with Nome Africa but the first paying job in tech was from Groove Tickets. And I did not have like any background of blockchain. So I was literally learning on the job. So that was the process that took me from, the baking space to currently doing tech and thriving.
All right. Yes, I would definitely say thriving. Yes, because I can see what you're doing. I'm like, wow, you're really thriving. Yeah. So, out of curiosity, why tech though? Why was there a need for you to transition to tech?
I'd say our environment actually plays a huge role in our decision making. And at the time, I was with a friend who was already doing tech. He kind of like spurred that passion, seeing him thrive, especially like in a niche such as design, a niche where people would trivialize. They'd be like, graphic designers, how much did they pay them? Brand designers. But this was somebody who used that skill set, came into the tech industry and, just turned things around. And I saw the huge impact that also tech played in his life, right? In terms of expanding his relationship with people globally, in terms of like earning better, in terms of positioning him on a global scale. So he spurred that passion in me. And for any time that I think about like my tech journey, I would always say thank you to this person. Like this person was the reason that I got into tech.
Yeah, if you don't mind, you can shout out to the person. Like you can say his name if you don't mind sharing that.
Okay, I don't know. Shout out to you, Isaac Zara. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well done, Isaac Zara. All right. So, you've mentioned so important things there. I guess you mentioned the person that introduced it into tech, right? The things you saw that motivated you and then made you say, okay, I'm going to transition to tech. That's amazing. And again, I believe the tech money is also a big motivating a big motivating factor. All right. Okay, so I want you to talk on content, right? Content
Okay.
now is key, right? Everybody is doing content. Myself, I'm doing content. And I noticed a trend, right? There's UGC content, right? Which is user generated content. And while I was doing my little research, I um notice that there are more like terms related to like content. There's brand generated content, right? That's for brands. There's also influencer generated content, right? And I saw on your bio, I think it's was on your bio, I noticed it, right? UGC. Then I went to do a little bit of research. What does it mean? And then I started seeing it pop up in several other people's feed. I was like, Which one is UGC again? Right. So, do you mind explaining like what that means and maybe some of the differences like between like brands, focus generated content and influencers? Like, what does all of this content space? What do they mean?
Okay, so I'll focus on giving more context to UGC because that is
Okay.
literally my niche. I don't know about
Yeah.
brand.
Okay. That makes
So,
sense.
so first of all, like we've already established the fact that content is king. Like literally, even we communicate with content, right? There's
Yeah.
written content, video content, there is live content. So literally, you cannot say you are a creative and you are not making content. So when it comes to UGC simply means user generated content. So it means using the product, exploring the product, and then telling your story from your perspective as a user. So I think one of the differentiating factor that I've seen is that with UGC content creators, we get to use the product. That's what we're users first, right? With content creators, they can just get paid to just publicize the platform. But with we UGC creators, I'm talking specifically for myself, like what really makes me a UGC creator is that I get to use the product, explore the platform, provide feedback. I did that during my time when I worked with Rule. I also did that when I worked with Sobet. I was providing the team with feedback. I'm like, okay, this I think is based on like the audience that we're trying to target. Do you get? So I feel like that's the major difference. I don't really know about influencer marketing or brand marketing. I feel like in this space we're always reinventing, new words. So
Yeah.
yeah. So and that's why I'm very specific to the kind of brands that I work with, right? Because if I use your product, it should be solving a problem for me because that is how I'm able to communicate that same value to people who I feel like I also aligned with the pain points that I'm facing as a user. So
All right, thank you for sharing that. So I believe you were already doing some sort of user generated content for growth tickets before the term user generated content came about.
yeah.
Yeah, because I think it came about just recently and yeah, I've been seeing it everywhere. Right. So I like that you touched on that.
The truth is that user generated content has always been there. It's just that a lot of, I feel like user generated content is now beginning, a lot of people are now beginning to recognize its importance in the tech space. But we've seen people who are UGC content creators like that focused on, skincare. And so
Yeah.
it has always been there. It's just that it's a new,
Okay.
it's where, like I said, currently trying to recognize its importance in the tech and Web3 space. Yeah.
All right. All right. So let's move back to the community space, right? With your experience, how has managing communities helped the projects that you're working on, right? I'd like you to
Yeah.
touch on that a little bit. Also, another question. I've joined a lot of communities, right? And eventually I did not participate in any of them, or I did not participate in the activities that were going on there. So how, as a community manager, how have you been able to keep the community engaged, right? I would like you to touch on that because I would also love to learn from that experience. And how have you been able to keep the community thriving, right, with the product?
So I'll start with your last question, and I'm going to
Okay.
reference that you joined communities, but you did not participate. So the question I always like to ask, for those communities that you joined, what was the reason you joined those communities? Just give me like an instance.
Yeah. So, if I were to give, so maybe there was something I like. There was a service they were offering that made me join. Right. So, like, if I open my Discord app currently, I have thousands.
Of
I have a
communities,
lot of a lot of communities. Like I even need to like leave some, right? But I've joined a lot, right? But I'm not actively involved in the discussions that are happening there, right? And I mostly joined maybe because of there was something that piqued my interest.
very good, very good, and I love that you said that there was something that piqued your interest because at the end of the day, I feel like if we community managers actually understand that people will join and participate in communities for different reasons. Some people just join to ask questions and get feedback. And once they've gotten that, like,
Yeah, go on.
you not see them engaging again, but it doesn't mean that they
Yeah.
did not get value. And that's why we have something we call lockers in the community, right? So people who are part of your community, which is they are contributing in terms of the size of your community. They are not actively engaging, right? But you cannot say that they're not gaining value at the end of the day, because me too, there are some communities that I'm part of. I'm going to give an example. I'm part of this community, Hunt Town. They share a lot of amazing resources there. You can go to the community, you see like a lot of like job ads. Although like when you're applying for jobs in Web3, you want to be like, you want to keep your eyes on the ground, because there are a lot of like scam job opportunities right now. But in essence, like even in terms of the quality of conversations that happen in the community, sometimes I just go to glean from, those quality conversations, but you will never see me type anything. And at the end of the day, does it mean that I'm not getting value as a member? No, right? So I feel like understanding the psychology of why people join and participate in communities is really important. I would always ask my fellow community managers, right? So if you say, for example, your community is not, your members are not engaging, I would always ask, so what is the benefits your members stand to gain from being a part of your community at the end of the day? Because if whether or not we're going to like it, like it's a mutual kind of like mutualism, right? Your members have to be benefiting, and so does the business, right? At the end of the day. And that is why you will see that in the Web3 space, for example, they use financial incentives to draw people in. But at the end of the day, right? For me, I would always say that I do not have an issue with financial incentives. So far, you are designing the incentive program in a way that makes sense for the business and also for the people who are going to be participating at the end of the day. Because for any campaign you're running, the brand has to get value in some kind of way. You cannot just be like spending money to get users who are just coming to say GM in your community, and then that's it. So going back to your first question, I'll say number one is understanding why and how people engage, right? So for communities that I've managed, I'm going to use, okay, let me just go back to this right there. For me as community manager, I usually love managing product-based communities, right? Because at the end of the day, there are various objectives that you can drive using community as a means. Like it's clear. There's product feedback, there's product support, there is user acquisition, there is user retention, there is contribution, there is engagement, and overall like business success. So for example, during my time at Nome Africa, our business goal, although it was like an open source project, but our business goal was to drive more contributions to the Nome project, because we were trying to get more Africans involved in contributing to Nome. So that was the aim, to get more people to contribute. And then when I came into the community, because the community was dead for like about 2 years, so my first goal was to revitalize the engagement, like get people actively, showing up again and again. And the very first thing I did was to go and reach out to past contributors, right? I had to follow through. I had to go through like previous GitLab conversations to see at what point did the engagements play through, because it's always important that you at what point like people stop engaging. At what point did you start noticing like that drop? So I had to reach out to like past contributors, people who used to be very active before, asked them, okay, what do you want to see more? What made you stop contributing? And I gathered that feedback. And then I realized one thing, right? I'm using Nome Africa, for instance, like as an exemplary, right? I realized one thing. There was kind of like a divide in the non-technical skill set and the technical skill set. So it was more as if they were prioritizing like the technical skilled people in the community, right?
All right.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, at the end of the day, like we have to breach that divide, because every project needs both the non-technical and the technical people, right? So what did I do?
True.
I started creating like various contribution touch points. So before, we would see more developer activities like on GitLab. So I started saying, okay, I would create like various issues like, let's say we need content. Go and register your interest on GitLab. And with the way GitLab and GitHub works, like it records like every interaction, contribution. So then I now designed the recognition program called the NOM. I think we called it NOM. Is it NOM Star of the Month or something like that? Because at the end of the day, you also want to understand human psychology, that people want to be seen. People want to be appreciated for what they are, for their contributions, right? So I designed that
Yeah.
program. When we put out the first NOM Star of the Month, I noticed that the engagement, went up, because people want to be recognized at the end of the day, right? And
Yes.
as much as possible, I tried, spotlighting the people who were actively contributing, right? I even had to form a team. And part of my team, we had one dev, because me, I'm not a technical person, right? So the role of the dev was kind of like to bridge that technical divide. In case we have like, technical questions and I'm not able to answer that dev, I can just run to the dev and say, oh, see. Then we also had like 2 project managers. We had a graphic designer. These were sets that, we're not being recognized in North African region. You can build a product, but you also need people to push it. You need designs, you need jiggets. So that's,
Yeah.
spot up the participation level. Then we also started hosting X spaces. And I think one thing too that we need to realize as community managers, or rather one thing I've realized, is that you need to create different touch points to meet the interests of different people in your community. So for example, you might be hosting a particular program and not everybody in your community will participate. And that's totally fine, because it means that at that particular point, that program is not something that they are interested in. It's not something that serves value for them. But then you see that if maybe you're hosting something
Yeah.
like games, you will see the people who joined the people who did not join when you were hosting a webinar, join when you're hosting like a games night. That is something that, spurs their interest. You get. So we started hosting like Twitter spaces, and the aim of those spaces was, touchlighting the pain points that open source contributors face in Africa. And we also saw like, incredible amount of engagement, like on that level, like people started to recognize Gnome Africa. Then I think the program that, I would always reference was a 2 weeks bootcamp program that myself and the team hosted, aimed at getting people into that was something Google Summer of Code and Outreach. I don't know if you've heard about it. Yeah. And at the end of that program,
Yeah, I've heard about it.
yes, so 2 developers got into Google Summer of Code just from the program that I and my team organized. And that references the impact that community actually has, right? Because you can imagine if that program never happened, probably they would still have gotten into Google Summer of Code, but that program created the medium in which they were able to. Do you get? So just to give a summary, I'm like, it's very important to understand the psychology of why people are joining your community. So people join communities to ask questions. Some people join communities because they just want to be part of a group. Some people join communities obviously because of like the financial incentives that they get from it. Some people join communities also because they want to improve on like their expertise, right? Some people also join communities because they want to help with, your product feedback. They just want to be part of your product journey. So understanding these various reasons will help you design various touch points to get members actively engaging. Do you get? Also, you want to focus on, when
Yeah.
it comes to conversations, I will always say, focus on the quality of conversations, right? Rather than on the quantity. So it's better to have one quality conversation in your community per day than to have GM, 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 GM. So as a community manager, that is also something you want to, really sit down and thoughtfully design. Yeah. So during my time at Groove Tickets, our community was basically used as a means to get product feedback and also product support. So we would always tell people that if you want the quickest response time to an issue that you're facing on like the app, using the app, just join our community
Okay.
and drop whatever issues you're having, and you get like, so that part of like the value that we were using to that we were building our
Bring
community around.
in members.
Yeah.
All right, Phoebe, all you've said is were so profound, right? It shows the depth that you have in this space, right? So let's move on to the Web3 space, right? So I've noticed something about the Web3 space. The
Yeah.
Web3 space is big on community,
Yeah.
right? There's no like whenever I see someone in their bio and they're like they're in the Web3 space, you always see like they are part of this community, right? I've noticed that, right? I don't think this was evident in the Web2 space, right? But it's very big that every Web3 person you see is always in one or two communities, right? So I'd like you to touch on why you feel the Web3 community is, or rather, why the Web3 space is big on community.
That's
Or would
another
you say,
question. Okay, no, like go.
okay, I want to say, would you say you agree with me that you've also noticed that the Web3 space is always filled like with communities?
Yes, I 100% totally agree. I just feel like in the Web3 space, we over index on vibes, communities, and then under index on usage. And that is why you see a lot of communities being formed around products that do not have utility. We see that a lot happen in the Web3 space. And I'm a community manager, but I'm going to be very truthful because at the end of the day, you cannot community your way out of a bad product. But if you have a good product, then you can build a
Yeah.
community and like start a good movement around it. I always tell like my Web3 friends, like when I'm having this conversation that most of the times even leads to like a debate, right? I'm like, let's take Web2 products for instance. Duolingo, Piggyvest. These are products that you use. Are you part of their community on Discord? Are you part of their community anywhere? By the end of the day, these products are adding value to you. And you are active. In short, I always tell my friends, if you don't have a Piggyvest account, go and create one. Like I'm an ambassador for them offline, but I'm not part of their community. At the end of so I just feel
Yeah.
like Web3, we've just created this community-centered culture that tells you or that makes you feel like, oh, if you're building a product, you have to build a community, right? I would always say that community is not the platform you use, but the network of people that you're able to bring together. And it doesn't matter if that is happening on a Discord server or if that is happening on social media, or even if that is happening offline. At the end of the day, you're building a network of people. The network of people can be your product users. And you can see that, like, I would always use Duolingo as a perfect example. Duolingo has mastered the art of a community-centered product. So they infuse the community into their products. And you see that in the way they scale in terms of leaderboard activities, in terms of like incentives, like points, and awarding system. Like you just see that in the way that their app is designed. So I feel like at the end of the day, if Web3, not let me not generalize because there are also
Okay.
products in Web3 that communities have been very helpful in getting ramping up users and all, right? I made a post yesterday. I think I quoted a post by Bertrand where he asked, would you rather go on a 90 days community building or partner with a tier 1 protocol and gain 5K passive users? And I'm like, if I'm going to be truthful, I'm a community manager, but I'll pick the 5K passive users because what those 5K passive users gives you is proof of utility, right? And it's easier to now pick contributors from the 5K passive user. It means that they are passive. It doesn't like passive users means at least they've seen your product, they've interacted with it. Do you get? But then probably they just felt like, this is not really giving me value. So that is when you, as the product owner, will not say, okay, people dropped off after they connected their wallets. So it means that probably we need to improve the onboarding experience on this DApp. Do you get? So at the end of the day, like community is very, very important, right? And I would always say, build a good product first and then build your community alongside. When I was building Fibi Bakes as well, I had to build my business first. And then with time, I started the community started forming on its own. Do you get? So when you put out value for products, when your product actually offers a good, unique value proposition, and it's having like a benefit for your users, trust me, like you're naturally going to have community like start forming around it. I feel like in Web3, we want community managers to do magic and form vibes like into existence. And that doesn't work. And that's why you see a lot of people like after the incentives, like the financial incentives, what happens next? Like that's always the question. What happens next? Because financial incentives will get people in. And then when they feel like, oh, it's no longer there, then they would automatically stop interacting with your product, with your community. So I feel like, first of all, build a product with good utility, something that is serving real value for your users, and a community will naturally form around it. So that's like my take on the whole Web3 centered community culture. I feel like we need to do better, honestly. We need to stop using communities as a way of chasing hype and start using communities as a way of actually building structured objectives around like the business value and product value. Yeah.
Wow, I love the way you put everything, right? I love the way you mentioned that products should be the first thing you focus on, right? Especially in the Web3 space. And then community, right? If you have a good product, then you can build a good community around that. That's interesting. That's interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Right. So for those that are watching this that would love to work in this space of community manager, right? There might be someone watching this now that is saying, "Oh, I can talk to people. Oh, I can bring people together," right? You said, like you mentioned, community is a network of people, right? That especially maybe they've used your product or they would likely want to use your product, right? So for anyone watching this now that would like to jump at the community manager role, especially in tech, like you are currently doing, what would be that advice that you have for them?
Okay. So I would say number one, have a focus point. So do you want to be a Web3 community manager, or do you just want to focus on Web2, like building communities around like Web2 based products and brands? So that's like the first focus point. Then if you say you want to do like community management in the Web3 space, having a deep understanding of the niche you're trying to build. Because, for example, you cannot say you want to come and build a baking community and you don't really understand like the nitty gritty of, you don't know what flour is. Flour, right? Oh, no, it's called flour, not flour. You don't know what flour is. You don't know what
Yeah.
sugar is. You get? So if
Yeah, I get.
you want to delve into like Web3 as community manager, you need to understand like the blockchain basis. Then one tip I always give is, even if you're not applying for a role, right, go and start researching certain job roles in the niche that, you want to come into, because that gives you a preview of the skills that are being sought after. It gives you also a preview of the things that you need to learn. So I do that a lot. I'll go through job descriptions. I'll say, like, and I've been saying, right now, like in our role as community managers, you see support. So it tells you that as a community manager, you want to go and also skill up in that aspect. Even you will see some say you need to have like the basic understanding of marketing. That also tells you that, okay, you need to go and skill up in that area, right? So I would say research different job descriptions, even if you're not applying, and then I would say the third thing that has greatly helped me would be building in public as you're learning, right? Because that puts you in a place where you are visible and people begin to see you and know that, okay, this is what you're doing. So it helps your visibility align, in the sense that when there is an opportunity, people can say, oh, I know a girl that has been posting that she's learning community management on X. So it's okay for you to learn, but
Yeah.
I'll say don't learn in isolation, right? Even if you're an introvert, a lot of people use the excuse of, oh, I'm an introvert. I would always say, on social media, you show people what you want them to see. So it's okay. You can still keep part of your life private. So for me on X, I'm strictly all about my community management work, putting out my community management content. Do you get? So you can decide that you just want to post your learnings, and you must not even do it on X. You can decide you want to do it on LinkedIn. Do you get? So pick a platform that,
Yeah, I get.
you're going to build in public around like what you're learning, sharing your learnings, your wins, your fails, asking questions, getting constructive feedbacks and all of that. Then I would also say there's a course, because when it comes to what we do, the field of community management, I think one issue a lot of people complain about, like first timers, is lack of resources. So there's a resource. I'm going to send you the link to the resource so that you can put it like in your
Yeah,
description.
I'll
So
add it. I'll add it to the description.
it's a free course by Fibi, and at the end of the course you get certified. So what that course gives you is the basic introductions of like your job role as community manager, things you need to know, things you need to understand, like the business objectives that you're helping solve, as a community manager. So it gives you like a practical standpoint of what your day-to-day role is going to be like look like as a community manager. Then I would also say, as much as possible, build up your communication skill in terms of like the way you write, in terms of the way you speak. Because we touched on content, and as you're
Yeah.
communicating, you're basically creating content, whether or not you like it. So I would always say that the way you communicate determines how people experience your community. You get? So as a community manager, first timer in the space, you just want to ensure that you are actively building and working on your communication skill. And also feel free to, you know, explore other roles. Don't just limit yourself to moderation. So you will find out that when you're coming into the community management space, a lot of people will tell you, oh, just focus on community moderation. You can be more than that, right? There is the support aspects. You can be like a community support manager. Yes, there are community support managers. You can be a community operations manager. You can even be a community events manager. There are community managers that I know that their role is solely focused on events. So in my current role now, like I said, mine is on engagement, strategy, and internal collaboration plus translating product feedbacks. So as much as I can, I try to work with UI, UX engineering. Like I try to join the UI, UX engineering team meetings, the creative works meeting. And this gives me like a practical standpoint to know, okay, this is literally the phase of product development that is currently ongoing. So, okay, this is how I'm able to like translate this product feedback in a way that makes sense to my community to keep them abreast of the current developments and all. So these are like the things in my idea and also if you're coming into the Web3 space, I want to tell you that you're going to feel very overwhelmed because this space is one that moves very fast. So you're going to see a lot of people telling
Yeah.
you, do this, don't do that, do this, don't do that. Just have a goal in mind and tell yourself that your focus is you're coming into here, this is what you want to learn, and this is how you want to show up. So that keeps you aligned in the sense that when the noise is getting too much, you just find yourself, coming back to the basics of why you are there and what you are there to achieve. So
Yeah, I totally agree with you. The Web3 space is like fast. Like I can't even catch up, right? I can catch up, but it's hard to keep up, right? And I know that there's a lot I don't even know in the Web3 space, right? I need to devote time and really like learn more about that space, right? I love all that you've said, right? Two things stood out for me. You said building public, and also you mentioned like have like a niche, know where you are really going to, right? If you are trying to build in the community or manager space, right? That is so profound, right? So, um, I believe you've been in this space for give or take 4 years now. It's 4 to 3 years or
or
so.
2, 3. Yeah.
2, 3. Okay. Yeah, 2, 3. Okay. So would you say this community manager space that you've been in 2 to 3 years now, like how do you see the impact?
Sorry to cut you short.
Okay.
Sorry to cut you short. Like when you're talking about the years, is it in terms of like like my community manager experience in tech or in general? Because if it's in general, I've been in community management space like since 2017.
Oh, all right, all right. Okay, so let's say in general, but I was more focusing in tech, right? But general counts, right? Because it's the same thing, right? I believe the difference between like community manager in tech and community manager outside is just the technical knowledge that you need to know
Yeah.
and understand, and yeah, but I believe it's the same thing. So, but let's focus on tech for the purpose of this conversation, right? What changes have you seen that has really shaped you and says that, oh, no, this role is is a good one, right? What are some of the things that you've noticed or some of the benefits you've seen in your life or the improvements, right? Like you mentioned, the person that brought you on board into tech, right? You saw some things in him that said, okay, this is a good field to go into, right? So with your experience in tech, right, as a community manager, what are some of the profound changes you've seen in your life that tells you that, okay, this space is a good one to be?
So I'd say the first is that it has helped me shape how I communicate, both orally and when I'm writing. Yeah. And I think this is a skill set that I would carry on till whenever. Because literally in any field, a good communicator basically outshines a mid communicator, because then you know how to communicate the impact of what you're doing. You know how to communicate the work in a way that makes sense. I would tell people that when you're creating documents, one of the things that I'm currently learning in my current role that I used to, trivialize before, is when it comes to creating documents, the way you space it out, the way you ensure that you're not using short form, ensure that you're currently punctuating, those are things that when professionals read your document, they can say, this person actually knows what he or she is doing. And you'd also see that it it has also helped me, like, in the way that I write on social media, because I always tend to, make sure that when I'm writing now, I'm always focusing on the reader. I'm like, when somebody's reading this, does it actually make sense to them? So that's like the first. It has helped me improve on my communication skill. The second I would say is in terms of the monetary aspect, right? Let's not leave that aside and pretend that it doesn't exist.
Money is important too.
Very important. So it has helped me build
Yes.
my financial vehicles, like in the way that I save, in the way that I invest. In short, sometimes I'm
Yeah.
actually thankful, yeah, because the financial aspect has really helped me, yeah, like be able to afford the things that I want, take care of myself, do you get, and also take care of the people around me. So that's the second. The third I would say is the relationship and network that I've built. Like, tech and Web3 has been so helpful in making that happen, because I get to attend tech events, I get to attend Web3 events, and I meet the most amazing people, like people who know their shit, people who know what they are doing in this space, right? So I'd say that has also opened me up to that. What else am I missing out on? Then I would also say, in terms, and even like, it's funny how I was having a conversation with a member who lives in Panama City, Florida, right? And I'm like, you can imagine if I was not managing a community, I probably wouldn't have had that conversation that kind of like opened my eyes into what goes on, like in Panama City, in terms of like the life over there, how money works, how money and crypto like works
Okay.
over there. So it also, community management has also opened me up to meeting people within various like geographical landscape that, by discourse of meeting them like in person, that wouldn't have been possible. But like the online communities that I'm part of, that I've managed, has, given me such a wider scope of communicating with people like on a global scale. I think lastly would be knowing that I get to make a difference, that the work I do actually does make a difference. When I get messages of people reaching out to me, people checking in on me, people saying, oh, thank you, Phoebe, for this. Oh my gosh, she hosted this space. And at the end of this space, like, I was able to gain this. Oh, Phoebe, I applied for a role because of the knowledge and teachings that, you provided. That makes my day. I was literally having a bad day, December last year, and I just woke up to a message from a fellow community manager, and that brightened my day. Like, I went from moody to very happy for the rest of the day. So that is one. In short, I feel like that is the no. Let's not remove money, because money is important, but that is one value that community management opened me up to, like, getting quality feedback from people, knowing that I'm actually part of the people who are shaping the lives of other people in one way or the other. Do you get that? People can come to the communities I've managed and say, oh, it was because of this program that was designed by Phoebe and her team that I was able to get this, or oh, this program, helped me in getting my first money in Web3. Like, if it was like a financial incentive campaign we ran, for example, do you get? So those are like various touch points that at the end of the day, like, I'm grateful that my job as a community manager can, does help me achieve as well. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. Just hearing this makes me wonder, Shay, I will not just go to a three space like this. Am, am I not, would I not be joining too late?
Funny part is that even I feel like in any niche, right? Because I still get messages from people in my baking community asking, Phoebe, when are you coming back? We miss your Cake Edu Monday. Because there was a content series I was running for 3 years. Like I used to put it out like every month. So people will still come back and say, oh, Phoebe, we miss your Cake Edu Monday series. Or when are you coming back? So I feel like in any niche, so far you're adding value. It doesn't necessarily even have to be Web3. You will still like, be deserving of
Yeah,
people's praise and jiggets. Yeah. So.
yeah, I get. All right, thank you very much, Phoebe. We'll be rounding up now. Before we go, I would like you to touch on one thing that you are currently learning. So I noticed, I remember you mentioned that you are learning how to like be conscious about drafting documents. But aside that, what is that one thing that you're currently learning right right now?
So I'm currently learning Web3 marketing. I'm working with a Web3 marketing leader to, help sharpen my insight because I feel like you see skill sets like marketing, community, I like to put them under the intangible skill set because those are skill sets that you might just be reading and you're just gaining the theoretical knowledge. And if you're not putting them into practice at the end of the day, you don't know what you are doing, right? So this is working with this person is helping me gain a more hands-on approach, right? So that's like my current um learning focus, trying to ensure that I'm good. And it has opened my eyes because a lot of what I used to think, because before I used to be so focused on organic marketing, like even during my time at Phoebe Bakes grew from whatever number it was to 20,000 in 3 years organically, right? But then learning from this particular person is teaching me that you can actually explore other inorganic marketing strategies, right? And it still gives you the same value and it even shortens the time frame. So you don't always have to go organic, right? And it's also helping me think
Yeah.
outside the box. I think that's what one thing marketing does because marketing is all about like experimentation, thinking, different things and then trying to experiment and see what works and what doesn't work. So my major focus now is like on Web3 marketing. And I feel like it's an added layer to the work I get to do as a community manager. And I feel like even if, let's say next month, I say I don't want to do Web3 again, I want to go back to my business, I feel like I can still take some of the marketing strategies that I've learned, refine it to suit my business, like as an entrepreneur. So
All right, that makes sense. That makes sense. Web3 marketer, right? So I believe this would involve like advertising, um essentially making sure that people as much people get to see the product, right? The Web3 or whatever you're marketing, right? As much people get to see the product so that they get to use the product and that shortens your time, like instead of doing things organically, right? Am I right to say what I said?
yeah, the one thing marketing does for you is you can both explore the organic approach and the, let's say, should I call it inorganic approach? Yes, which is utilizing other methods that would enable you get the job done in the shortest
Yeah.
time possible. Then it's also good to, there are like marketing strategies that are like long term, that like when you explore them, they're like on a more long term basis. So it's always good to, put everything and not just stick to one thing. Like always be open minded. Somebody who is, very good at experimentation. Yeah. To see what works and what doesn't.
All right. Thank you very much, Phoebe, for sharing your experience with us, for sharing your journey through and being an entrepreneur. I believe you are still an entrepreneur, right? From sharing your journey from the bakery to tech and to community managers to Web3. Thank you very much. And I'm sure that everyone watching this has learned something new. And I'm grateful for having you on this show. Thank you for agreeing to be on the show. Right. I'm really grateful.
Yeah. And also
All right.
let's thank
For
MTA for making this happen.
okay, okay, MTN. All right, thank you, MTN, for being reliable today. Yes, yes, it's very important because if they are not reliable, we'll not be able to record, right? So thank you very much, MTN, for being reliable, unlike the previous day when you were unreliable. All right, thank you everyone also for watching the show. I hope you've learned something new, right? See you in the next video. Before we go, please don't forget to subscribe. Hit the subscribe button, it's free, right? So see you on the next show. Bye.